Okay.
So his face looks like
Sorry.
it's
Yep. That's
there
right.
it is.
That's right. Okay. We'll do that. Go ahead, David. It's all you.
I'm good to roll however, so no problem. Well, thanks for the opportunity to be with you all once again, and always enjoy getting together and seeing so many friendly faces and friends. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about city council and how it works and what we do, and then I'll throw it to the mayor, who will talk a little bit about how we take all of that and make it happen, make it work from a day-to-day functional sort of basis with the city. So city government is structured much like the federal government or the state government. There are three branches. There's the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. And that's the case at the federal level, the state level, and it's the case at the city level as well. The executive branch would be the mayor and the administration of the city. The judicial branch is obviously our local court system. And then the legislative branch, the legislators for the city, is city council. And it's built that way from the federal level on down for a reason. It's to ensure a system of checks and balances so that no one individual or group gains so much power and authority that some other individual or group can't help put that into check and make sure that there's just not people running off doing whatever they want to do. And so cities in Ohio are similarly structured in that same way with those three branches of government. For Lancaster City Council, we're made up of 9 representatives plus the president of council. 6 of those members of council are ward representatives. Wards are geographic districts within the city that are broken down, and every ward gets a representative. And then the other 3 representatives, the other 3 members, are at-large members, which means that they represent the entire city. So every resident of Lancaster gets to vote on 4 of the 9 members of Lancaster City Council. You get to vote on your ward representative. So I live in Ward 1. So when I go vote, I only ever get to vote for the first ward candidate and then the 3 at-large members, which are citywide electors that are people that the city at large would elect to those spots. So those 6 wards plus the 3 at-large members make up the 9 members of city council plus the president. We also appoint a clerk. That clerk is an employee of city council, and that person takes all of the minutes, ensures that all of our meetings are posted out for public notice, and handles many of the administrative functions of Lancaster City Council. So as the legislative authority or the legislative body of the city, City Council really has a few really specific duties and responsibilities. First, we make laws. City Council passes legislation that inevitably turn into laws. The second thing we do is approve the budget. And so typically the mayor will put together, along with the department heads and employees of the city of Lancaster, a budget. That budget comes before Lancaster City Council for amendment, discussion, and eventual approval. And then we serve as sort of the fiscal oversight, the fiscal check and balance arm for the city. And so if it's something that's got money attached to it, it's going to come before Lancaster City Council at some point. And so what we do to ensure that everyone has the ability to kind of participate in a valuable way is City Council is structured into 9 different committees. So each member of Lancaster City Council chairs one committee, and they serve on 2 other committees. So they have a total of 3 committees. And the committee structure is really, really important because all of City Council is part-time. We are part-time elected officials for the city of Lancaster. All of us have a full-time job or are retired from a full-time job. And so there's not enough time for us as part-time elected officials to understand in depth everything that's happening in a city the size of Lancaster. So what we do is focus in on those 3 committees. The 3 committees that each member is on will focus in particular areas and departments And it allows them to really gain a lot of knowledge and experience and some measure of expertise in those three areas, so that when legislation comes forward out of those three areas, that city council member can speak with some level of competence to that legislation. Now, everyone's involved in everything, and so even ward council people who may only represent a particular ward, they're still involved in the city at large from a decision-making standpoint. But those three committees really allow us to focus in and get really specific in some areas where we can then come back to city council and speak with knowledge and add some value. And so what happens when legislation starts in the process is it typically starts either because a city council member wants to do something or because the administration has come forward and said that they want to do something. It begins at the committee level. The committee will take that legislation, they'll begin to talk about it, and eventually that committee will sponsor the legislation out of that committee and onto the floor of city council. When that happens, that's when we all have the opportunity to begin to discuss and debate the legislation that's coming before us. And so when the city does that, when legislation comes before the city, what happens is city council isn't allowed to just meet whenever it wants. We can't meet in private or secret. Everything that city council does must be in the public, it must be transparent, and it must allow that the public see and hear what actually is happening. And so when we have a meeting, we have to post out public notice of any meeting we have, whether it's a committee or whether it's a full city council meeting. Whenever we meet, the public has to be able to attend, or they have to be able to hear the deliberations. So we can't go into a back room and decide this is the way we're going to do this. This is how we're going to vote on this particular legislation. It doesn't work that way. We have to do it in the open. All the discussion and the debate has to happen in the open, and then the decision has to be made where the public has access to it. During the challenging coronavirus times, we've found creative ways to sort of do that. So we've been streaming our meetings out, and we've been doing so for the last couple of years, where you can see our meetings in real time online, as well as look at an archived copy of it after the fact, so that it's kept for posterity. You can watch it live on Spectrum 1021 if you have Spectrum and live in the city of Lancaster. And then when we're meeting in person, in chambers, and we aren't under any sort of health order as we have been over the last several months, then all the meetings, all committee meetings, everything is open to the public to attend. Now, when we were under that stay-at-home order, we were doing Zoom meetings where everyone was at their house, but we were broadcasting those Zoom meetings out so that they could be seen and heard. That way, the business of the city remains done in the public eye, because inevitably this is the people's business. This is the business of the city of Lancaster and its residents, and it must be done in the open. So we've worked hard to ensure that that's happening, and that we continue to have access by the residents to what's happening with city council. It even goes a little further than that, though, because you can't, as a city council member, someone can't call 2 or 3 or 4 other city council members and ask them how they're planning to vote on this thing, that thing, or the other thing. All of that discussion and all of that business has to happen in public. It doesn't preclude one member of council talking with one other member of council. That is permissible. But anytime you start to get a group of council people together, you start getting really close to having a meeting, and you can't have a meeting without the public being notified and the public being present. So sometimes there's this thought that all these things are decided ahead of time, or city council members are having discussions, as you might on a board of a nonprofit or at work, behind the scenes before you get to the meeting. That is not permissible with Lancaster City Council. It all must happen out in the public and out in the open. And that's a really, really important thing, because it ensures that the public knows exactly what's happening with its public legislators. So a couple other things I'll just mention really quickly, and one would be, so what's the role of the president? What does the president do? So the president of council is really, their role is to lead the legislative branch and serve as a bridge between that branch and the executive branch or the administration. So in city council meetings, I'm the chief parliamentarian. That means it's my job to ensure that we're doing everything we're supposed to be doing, the way we're supposed to be doing it, through Robert's rules and the rules of council, that our debate is appropriate and professional, and that we have moved legislation through the legislative approval process in a way that is correct and in a way that is efficient and effective. I also, as president, sort of manage the debate, ensure again that everything from a discussion and debate standpoint is happening the way that it's supposed to be happening. What we don't want to have happen, and what the president's role is to ensure that we don't turn into like Parliament, where everyone starts yelling at each other and you get a fight break out on the floor. That's not the way we do things, and it's the president's job to maintain order and ensure that city council members are acting appropriately as we discuss, debate, and actually work our way through the legislative process. The other thing I'll just mention quickly before I toss it over to the mayor is that we don't, there's very little partisan politics at the city level on city council. And I know that given everything we see and hear in the media, that may be hard to believe. I've been on city council where we've had 2 Democrats and 7 Republicans. Right now we have 1 Democrat and 8 Republicans. And the reality is it doesn't matter all that much. And the reason why is because we don't get into those statewide or national partisan political issues at the city level. In fact, between 98 and 99% of all the legislation we pass, and we pass usually more than 150 pieces of legislation every single year, 98 to 99% of that is passed unanimously with 9 people in favor and 0 against. Every once in a while, we'll get 1 or 2 or 3 people that vote against something. It is rarely a partisan issue. It is oftentimes the Republicans that are disagreeing with a particular direction or thing and not voting with everyone else. But usually we are voting together, and that can give the sense that, oh, they've done all this work, they've talked about this behind the scenes. But again, it's just not the case. We do the work of city council in the public eye on purpose because it is the work of the city. And, would it be easier, more expeditious to do it and have those backroom meetings and get work? Sure, it would. But that is not the way it gets done. It's not the way the law permits it to be done. And in fact, there are agencies that ensure at the state level that things do not happen that way to protect the citizens of Lancaster and ensure that the interests of those citizens are moving forward. So once all of that happens and the legislation sort of comes through city council and is approved, it then becomes the responsibility of, the opportunity for the work of the administration, the mayor, the other elected officials, and all of the department heads and employees of the city to sort of operationalize that. City council is not involved in the day-to-day decisions or work of the city. That work, it rests within the executive branch or the administration of the city. And so once legislation passes, the mayor and his team, they take that and they begin to operationalize it in the city. And so at this point, I'm going to pass it on to Mayor David Scheffler to talk a little bit about what happens once legislation gets passed, what the city does with it, and how they continue forward to ensure that we're all kind of working together toward the best outcome for the residents of Lancaster.
Thank you, David. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to share my screen. I have a slide presentation because I'm going to try to cover a lot of stuff in the approximately 15 minutes I have. And Rachel, I am happy when this is over, I can send you a PDF of these slides and you can distribute them out to everybody on the mailing list. So here we go, I think. This over here, and let me do slideshow in the beginning. So are you seeing my slides?
Yep, looks good.
I can't tell from here. Okay, so one thing I wanted to mention quickly is that there are two types of city government: statutory and charter. And Lancaster is a statutory city, which means we're completely governed by the Ohio Revised Code. And the things that David mentioned about city council and the way it operates is governed by state law. And a charter city, they can make their own rules, and they have a charter that the constituents vote on. So they can change things. They can call their city council something different. Most charter cities, one of the city council people operates as kind of a part-time mayor, and they have a city manager who kind of in a statutory city like we are, the mayor is kind of, if the typical term is a strong mayor, because they have the authority, where in a charter city, the city manager has the authority. So most of city government from the executive branch happens in the building that you see on the screen there. And I'm going to quickly go through some of the city departments. It's fairly complicated, and if you've heard me talk before, I've said I learned three things when I became mayor, because I came from the business world. And I'm only going to talk about two of them. One is city government is more complicated than you can ever imagine. I thought I had a pretty good handle on it before, but it was significantly more complicated than what even I anticipated. That was one thing I learned. The second thing I learned was it takes forever to get something done in government, something that you could decide in the business world in 6 minutes or 60 minutes to do. It might take 6 months to get done in government because of all the stages of things it has to go through. So on the executive side, there are different kinds of departments. One is enterprise departments, and you'll recognize them: the municipal gas company, water pollution control, sanitation, stormwater, and utilities collection. These are like little companies within city government. They are self-supporting, self-sustaining. They have to raise their own money. The city cannot give any money to them, and they cannot give any money to the city. So you've probably all heard that we have some financial issues in the city. So for instance, we can't raise our trash collection rates and then give the extra money to the city to hire policemen and firemen. Sanitation has to support themselves on their rates. We can't give them any money. They can't give us any money. That goes with all of the enterprise departments. We have special fund departments, and a couple of those are up here on the screen: streets and transportation. These departments also receive no income tax. So all the paving, all the snow plowing, all the pothole repair, everything that LDOT does is paid for by either gas tax revenue that we get from the state, the license plate fees, or in our case, we also have the 3 mil levy, which raises about $2 million a year specifically to pave streets. So again, the city doesn't give LDOT any money, then LDOT can't use any of that gas tax money that they get from the state and pay it back to us to hire policemen or firemen, etc. Others, community development, municipal court. Then we have other types of departments like parks and recreation. They are really self-supporting, but of the 1.75% income tax, 0.15% of that goes directly to the parks for their budget. They have to live within that. The city, other than that, doesn't give parks any money, and again, parks can't give any money back to the city. Blanks for public transit, the cemetery. There are others, but these are the ones that you mostly will recognize. Then there's the general fund departments that are funded by income tax. And again, some of these you may know about, others you don't. Fire and police are the obvious ones. Building department, engineering, zoning, code enforcement, the law director and the city prosecutor, the municipal court, economic development function, tree commission, and some of the ones that you may not even think about much is income tax, the city auditor, city treasurer, human resources, service safety director, my office, which is just me and an assistant, and city council salaries and expenses are paid from the general fund. And there are a number of commissions around, and then we also have to obviously support the city hall and annex. Lots of numbers on here, just gives you some quick note of the city and how big it is. You know, who would know we have 1,900 fire hydrants that we have to maintain. 2,500 street lights, which cost $250,000 a year just for the electricity for the street lights. You know, lots of vehicles, lots of people, lots of land, lots of buildings. So again, I'm going to send this to Rachel. She can distribute it. I'm not going to go through these in any detail. But I wanted to talk about economic development and some of the things that are going on in town. Obviously, the big announcement we had last year that Vice President Pence was here for the groundbreaking is the Magna Seating plant. They initially planned to start production about the time that the virus hit, so that got delayed. The plant is finished. They are installing equipment. They do have an operation in another city-owned building where they've got 20 to 30 manufacturing employees making seats for Chrysler minivans, but they will actually be kicking off production for their big contracts, and their big hiring push will be later this year. South Central Power is consolidating their corporate headquarters, which is out on 188 and Coon Path Road, and their Canal Winchester and Circleville operations to one big operation, one center directly across the street from the Magna plant out on Mill Park. Blue Label Packaging is a little company out on Route 37 right across from Treehouse Foods or the old Rostrum Purina plant. They've added an addition to their plant and added 30 jobs so far, and very good paying jobs. The Riverview campus of Fairfield Medical Center, which was open probably 6 months or so ago, added 60 jobs to the economy. Anchor Hocking is going great guns. They're now owned by Oneida. Oneida had a distribution center in Savannah, Georgia, which they closed and moved to the Anchor Distribution Center out on Fair Avenue. Also, they are adding a second tank, which is kind of hard to understand. I've recently had a tour of the plant, and I do understand now, but a second plant to make glass, which will add over 100 jobs. So between the distribution center and the new production jobs, something like 150. Lemon Development recently purchased a timber top property on Old Columbus Road, and they are in the process of going through planning, permits, etc., to build an assisted living building out there, which will add 100 jobs. CFM Global on South Ewing Street are adding a second production line, which is going to bring another 15 to 20 jobs. 3 Sigma is a new plant out in the Rockmill Industrial Park. We formerly had the Mondi company that made adhesive products, and 3 Sigma has taken over that plant and will be adding 60 jobs here later this year. Max Container is a startup. It's in the big brick building behind Totten's Carpets or the Super America gas station on East Main Street. They are going to, and they've already manufacturing shipping container modules, and they have a contract to make mobile hospitals. And their first contract is to send 50 of these to Indonesia. So that's going to be a big deal. Cam Logistics just purchased a 160,000 square foot warehouse in the Rockmill Industrial Park, and a lot of our companies like SRI, West Rock, Midwest Coatings all use those warehousing facilities in the Rockmill Industrial Park. Lancaster's unique in that we have the most certified sites, shovel-ready sites in Ohio. We have 3 already. We're working on the 4th one, and that means all the utilities, zoning, all the environmental work has been done. So if a company comes in and buys a site, they know that it's ready to roll. They can start building their building immediately. Workforce Development Center is in the old Fairfield DD building. Many of you will be familiar with that. We got $125 million in the last state budget to work with a partnership of Ohio University and Hocking College to put together a workforce development center for training folks for our local economy. We got a lot of retail things. Most notable and much anticipated is the Chipotle store on East Main Street, and then the Bridgestone Firestone store on Memorial Drive. So if you haven't seen it, this is a picture of the Magna plant taken from Mill Park Drive out in the Rock Mill Industrial Center. It is going great guns. It's a beautiful building. And right directly across the road, across Mill Park, is the South Central Power Site, which is under development. They're moving dirt. And in the bottom picture, you can see the Magnum plant in the background. Let's talk about housing. We definitely have a housing shortage in the city of Lancaster. All of our multi-family units have a low vacancy rate or no vacancies at all. We have a definite shortage in senior workforce and affordable housing. They all have long waiting lists. As a result, we're members of the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, better known as MORPC, and we are participating in a regional housing study, which has been going on since last fall, and that will be released in September. It will help us identify what our issues are, what the opportunities are, what resources are to help improve our housing situation in Lancaster. We have something unique here. We have 2 federal opportunity zones. Census tracts 317 and 322, the only federal opportunity zones in Fairfield County. They kind of straddle the downtown area, and I've got a map of those for you in a second. You can see that. And recently we added a community revitalization area overlay over these 2 census tracts, and also the one in the census tract in the middle, 320, to provide some tax incentives to build multifamily housing only. And in order to take advantage of the tax abatement, you have to build a living unit of at least three family unit or larger. You can't build a single family home or a 2-family duplex. So here's the map. The shaded areas are the opportunity zones. The immediate west side of downtown and immediate east and south sides of downtown. And the big black line that you see on here is the CRA overlay area. So anybody that constructs multifamily housing of 3 units or more inside this black area can get a tax abatement, real estate tax abatement. So we've got some good things going on in housing in Lancaster. We have the East Point, which is the former East School, which is under construction. Some of those units should be rentable by later this year. There are 28 units in the former East School building itself, and then there are 38 units being added. There are 26 in the school, and 38 will be added, or close to that, in what was formerly the playground. The Gateway site on the corner of Memorial Drive and Main Street, Fairfield Homes is expecting to break ground this fall for 100 market rate apartments down there. It's much anticipated and look forward to. Flats on Memorial Drive are currently getting their permits to start construction of 220 market rate apartments, and that's kind of behind the Ohio Health or the KFC building on North Memorial Drive. The Timbertop property, Lemon Development has been working with a multifamily developer to put 200 market rate apartments in there on North Columbus Street. Misty Meadows, which is on East Fair Avenue, almost at the end before you get to the Anchor Distribution Center. They have added a lot of homes, but they have plans to add 50 more single family residences. They have 6 or 8 under construction right now. And then just at the intersection of Edie Road and West Fair Avenue, the Overlook development, Rockport is planning an additional 40 single family homes up there, and they are moving dirt for that project right now. So this is a picture of the East Point project with the East School in the picture on the left, and pictures of the playground, the units that are being built in the playground on the right. So with that, my 15 minutes is up. I made it. And we are open for questions if anybody has any.
Mayor, we have one question in the chat. Is there a plan for the old Big Bear building on East Main Street?
That is privately owned, and at the moment there are no plans, to the best of my knowledge, to do anything with that. I know we hear a lot that the city, isn't the city doing this or that and the other thing, especially for restaurants like Chick-fil-A is a big one that everybody wants to know. Why don't we have a Chick-fil-A in Lancaster? That's because retail and restaurants typically um, are privately owned and privately promoted. We certainly get inquiries from restaurants, like we were very active in getting the Chipotle here. But we can go to them and say, hey, we'd like to have a Chick-fil-A here. And they go, well, that's nice, but we don't think you have the population or the market study to do that. But once they decide to put a restaurant here, such as Chick-fil-A, we are very involved in helping them in the permitting process, zoning, etc. So we're active in that, but we can recruit, till we pull our hair out for retail or restaurants, and it doesn't do a whole lot of good because they have to decide that they want to be here and that we have the market to support what they do.
I think the mayor is making an important distinction that a lot of people don't understand. And when we talk about economic development, and you regularly will hear politicians say, oh, yeah, we're going to work on economic development, make this happen. That's true. It remains a focus. But the reality is most of the time, from a city standpoint, it's our job to create an atmosphere conducive to economic development. That's our job, to make sure that the things are in place or can be put in place that make Lancaster attractive to businesses who will decide whether or not they want to locate here. And so I appreciate the mayor and his work in that area, because we've done a bunch, as you can see, to ensure that everything that we can do to make people want to come here is happening. And I'll also mention just very quickly that there has in the past, there has not always been the greatest relationship between the president of council or council members and the mayor. And that is not the case currently. Some of that goes back to both the mayor and I's friendship before either of us even got into politics. But more than that, it comes from a desire for all of us to work together to do what's in the best interests of Lancaster. And so I appreciate the mayor, his friendship. I appreciate the work that he does every single day, because what he said is so true. I still learn something new all the time regarding the city and what happens. It is unbelievably complex. And lots of times you'll hear people say, especially city council members, oh, well, I'm going to come in and we're going to do this and we're going to do that and we're going to do this. But the reality is that those city council members are one of 9. They're one member of a body of 9, and the collective wisdom of that body is what has to get pushed forward out into the legislative process. And so it's not always as easy. And as the mayor mentioned, from a state law standpoint, we're mandated to do so many things the way that we do them, that the things that you think we should do or that we think we should be able to do, oftentimes we cannot, and it's very frustrating, but that is the reality in which we currently live.
I'd circle back just briefly about economic development. And, I see on social media and you see letters to the editor about, oh, we need to bring jobs to Lancaster. And it's as if we're doing nothing. And there is a huge economic development effort going on, has been going on for years in Lancaster. And I can't emphasize enough how confidential all this stuff is. We have visitors come to town to scout out sites or find out about Lancaster, and we are not even told what their last names are, because we might be able to Google them and find out who they represent. They don't want us to know what company they represent. And so we may have several visits from a company and not even know the last names of the team that comes here to check us out. They don't want anybody to know they're in town. They will meet us at some office that they don't actually have to come into downtown. They may drive through the rest of the city later and check out what we look like, go by our schools, look at our downtown area, etc. But all this stuff is clandestine for sure. For instance, the Magna plant, we had probably 10 to 12 meetings with them, some all-day meetings, before they ever committed to Lancaster. And we started out to be one of maybe 30 or 40 cities that they were looking at, and that gradually gets narrowed down. And, you know, the state, Jobs Ohio is very involved. One Columbus is very involved, which is the regional economic development arm of Jobs Ohio. So rest assured that there is a lot going on in economic development. We have a visit coming up next week from a Japanese company that's coming here to look at us. This stuff happens all the time, and the public never knows about it. But that's how we got Magna, and we're going to get more. We just can't publish it in a newspaper or on social media, all the things that are going on. Do I see there's another question? Nope, there's only one question in chat. Any other questions?
I have a question. I wanted to know if on the website, is the information available like when there's new buildings going up, like with the businesses that's coming in town, or is that something that's made public?
Well, certainly building permits and those types of things are public information. So there's no effort to keep them secret, but they're not, I'm not aware of any place that they're published on the city website or anything.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah.
Well, and
Okay.
If somebody has a specific question and they want to ask, we can, you know, we can check, like the question about the Big Bear building. I know there was lots of talk about for years about something was going to happen on that site, and you know there were people who spoke supposedly with authority about this was going to happen there and that was going to happen there, but you know, there's rumors and there's the reality, and rumors sometimes seem to take on some authority that isn't deserved.
Kim, that's a really great question though, and while we don't necessarily push that kind of information out on any city website, let me encourage everyone to follow the mayor on his Facebook page. If there were a building going up or something new in town happening, it's likely going to get highlighted on that Facebook page. The mayor does a great job of pushing out all that's happening in Lancaster on there.
Gotcha. Okay.
Other questions? Rachel, I guess it's back to you.
Okay, if no one else has any other questions, I can wrap it up. I like what David said about your Facebook page, by the way. I like the transparency. I know sometimes you get some slack on your Facebook page, but we appreciate it. Go ahead.
Oh, the purpose of that Facebook page is to give information to the residents of Lancaster. It isn't to argue opinions with other people, or some people occasionally have their own set of facts. So it's not to argue their facts versus mine, or to argue opinions. And I sometimes see comments, well, the mayor won't respond to this. No, I'm not going to argue with people on there. I'm putting information out there that, to the best of my knowledge, is accurate. And I had a recent post that had like 360 some comments. Did I read them? No, I read a few of them maybe at times when I have a chance to sit down, but it's for informational purposes and not to argue positions, opinions, or facts.
We appreciate that. We appreciate your information. I just wanted to thank you guys again. I want to go over a couple other things that are coming up for our virtual community. Next week, we will have Double Edge on Tuesday and the Candy Cottage on Thursday. And Pam Whiteley will be our extra host. I don't know. She'll be filling in for me next week because I'm going on vacation. But I wanted to remind everyone that all of our virtual community episodes are on YouTube. And if you just search Fairfield County Virtual Community, you can see all the episodes we've had in the past. And then we're also adding a survey on there. So if you watch one and you love it, or if you watch one and you don't love it, you could give us some feedback so that we know what you're looking to see in the future. So that's all for me. So I appreciate David and David both being on today. We appreciate you taking the time and explaining some information about the city. And if you want to send me that PowerPoint, I can send it out.
Well, Rachel, thanks for putting us before beer and candy, because we
Okay.
we wouldn't have been able to compete with that.
No problem.
Are there free samples of those things next
Yeah,
week?
that's
I don't know. Virtual samples don't taste the same.
thanks, Rachel.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks. See y'all.